Okay, guys, so what we done last week, we talked about the concept of social networks and why that's important, and also the idea that social connections are not new. They've been around for as long as human beings have been around, right? And therefore, it's nothing new to us, but it also something that has been spread so fast because of these new technologies and the power that they bring to the business world and to everyone around us. So, what we want to do today, we want to talk about and pick up some of the features of social networks and why they're important for business, right? So you know that we're looking at social networks from the business perspective, right? So we need to try and see what are the benefits of social networks when it comes to the business world, right? And so today, what we want to do today, we want to talk about key sort of features, but not get into my details because obviously we won't be able to do that all. But what we want to try and do, we want to pick up some of those most popular ones and why they are so important for all of us to understand. Now, that's why it's absolutely essential that you get to play around with these social networking channels. So as much as doing the reading around the subject, you've got to get your hands on these things, right? So the first thing to do, of course, is start creating some profiles, start to getting an understanding how do people, companies behave in these social networks? What are some of the trends and why? What are some of those celebrities, right, that actually make their living from these social networks, right? So again, we need to get ourselves out from that daily use of social networks, put our business hat on and go in with that critical view, because that's the only way to be able to tell what does the social mean to business, right? But in addition to that, you'll be able to raise lots of questions. That's the whole idea. The most important thing is to be able to raise lots and lots of questions, right? Which are going to help you not just understanding these concepts and these models, but also seeing how they can be employed in a business perspective. Because not just for your assignment, but also in the business world out there, you will be asked, by default, you will be asked to either manage, set up, or get going with a new social networking marketing activity. Right? So you'll need to know, it's a part of every marketing initiative nowadays. So, what are some of the key things we'd like to talk about? Well, a bit of introduction, key features on social networks and why they're important. Why the personal brand is important, right? A little bit of that because I think it ties in quite well with the actual business as well. Because we tend to think of as businesses to be almost like human-like, but actually those businesses consist of humans that make that happen, right? It's us that build these brands, right? It's us that makes these brands so powerful. So that's why it's absolutely essential to maybe even go one step backward and really get an understanding as to how do we build our own social presence? What do we need to do about it, right? Because if we did succeed in building our own brand, we can replicate the same thing and the same practice to the business too, right? If you are doing really well with social networking activities, there's no one to say that you cannot replicate the same thing for your next job, right? But there are several things that you need to take on board for that. And the next one would be the last one about the powerful features that come into social networking channels to experiment with things. You've got to experiment as much as possible. Just signing up for those accounts is not good enough, right? You have got to make sure that you are in there, fully engaged, getting a really good understanding of those activities, right? Now, social stats are super high. I've got a video there, but I don't want to show it to you because you can watch it at your own time. But social stats are incredible. We now know that Facebook has reached our 1.6 billion users, right? And we talked about the powerful sort of business models that these social networking sites have. And why did we say they're so powerful? You know? Why do we say social networks are so powerful? What did we say that social networks are so powerful? Anyone? Yes, please.
It enables us to connect people, so it could be across the world.
Yeah, so that connection between people is super powerful. But that connection, what does that bring? That brings information. Information is the currency of digital economy. You've got information, you've got power, right? The reason why Facebook is so powerful, right, is because it's got so much data on people, right? And that data automatically means that you can crunch them, right? Or in a nice business way, you can analyze them, right? So then you can come up with a really good understanding as to who you're trying to serve. And by understanding insightfully very well who your customers are, right? You can serve them with better content. You can serve them with more tailored content. But not just content, products and services as well, right? You see why these social networks are so powerful. Why YouTube is so powerful, right? Is exactly the same thing. Because you've got so much content being uploaded every minute, to the point that whether you decide to ignore it or not, very soon you will end up watching a video on how to fix a computer, how to write a document, how to set your table of contents, whatever it is. In one way or another, or for entertainment purposes, which is probably the most popular, right? Watching your favorite videos, or trailers, movie trailers and so on. So, excuse me. So it's really important to get a really good understanding that the power behind these social networks are the data that they have, right? You remember there's so much being talked about whether they should give us a chance to delete entirely our accounts whenever we sign up. But in most cases, even if you deactivate them, they'll still be there. They're not going anywhere. In fact, after 10 years, you can still go back to your Facebook account and just activate that, and here we go. You've got everything as you had 10 years ago, right? So it's really important to get that in line. Now, the stats are incredible, but some of the most popular ones, social networking channels, are the ones that somehow having a huge impact in the traffic they bring to the websites too. That's why they get quite important. Because whatever we do online, we will have some digital presence, and that digital presence is a website, or a blog, or like a forum, or whatever it is. So what do we want to do? We want to bring traffic to the website, right? And the very best way to bring traffic to the website without spending extraordinary amounts of money is to do what? To build up enough activities on social networks, right? And then link those to the website, so then these guys, as an end destination, get to your website. Instead of spending all the time they have in social networks talking about your brands, but in the end you don't see any benefit whatsoever, right? And that's one reason why some brands fail terribly bad in trying to convert some of those activities into business. Because they do really well in building up those trends in social networks. But that's all it is. It's just a trend. There's nothing happening. There is no traffic being managed really well in relationships, so then those connections are moved into the actual store or shop or blog or whatever it is that you're running. All right? And when we talk about a social networking strategy, we will talk about this as well, right? But the whole idea is to be able to have a pretty good plan as to what you're going to do with those popular connections or popular trends or activities that you are engaging with in each individual social networking channel. What are you doing with it? And when you start doing the work and research, we will raise questions as, for instance, okay, these X, guys for X, working for X company are doing this well in social networks, right? And we'll say, okay, that's fine, so what? What does that mean for business? Because most researchers and students as well, when they do their work, they go ahead and write a long report just telling us how good those brands are in social networks in terms of followers, subscribers and everything. But nobody, or very little, very few talk about what does those activities mean for the business. Or, going one step forward, what do they do with those things, right? And that's when the conversion, which is part of the strategy, kicks in. In fact, part of your research, when you do, it will be to try and identify what do these things mean, what do these trends, what do these features mean for the actual business, right? And you will only get to the insight by raising questions. Raising questions is the most powerful thing you can ever do. And the only way to do that is by doing the reading, playing around, experimenting with social networks, so then you can quickly come up with all those questions that maybe can get us quite a bit of time discussing in our tutorials. Sometimes you get a question from someone at tutorial time, and we spend good 20, 30 minutes talking around it, right? Because it's something we haven't thought about. It can be around social networking strategy, it can be around engaging with customers, so whatever it is, because they are so powerful. Now, these are some of the trends that are happening the most across social networks. Now, this is like an infographic, okay? It's quite important to be able to bring in some of the insights from your research and tie it together in an infographic. It's just a nice way of visually organizing information instead of having a long report, right? It doesn't mean that for your individual assignment, that's all you have to do is an infographic, but there's no one to say that you can't put something together and present that as an infographic. It could be something that you can play around and present in a tutorial, fantastic opportunity, but I can tell you that in the business world, senior executives and your bosses, they will want to see things like that. They will want to see very nice and very easily what's happening with the work that you're doing without going to read all the work that you have researched around 15, 20 pages of the report, because they just do not have time. Yeah? So it's essential to be able to do that. And then you can start to present things in a nice way. Of course, these are some of the stats that I leave you up to look into them into more details, and you'll be reading around them quite a bit. But of course, things are changing around, things are improving. Of course, one of the biggest changes in this list is definitely Google+, because it is struggling big time, right? Okay, so just a quick stat a while ago provided by Bulloss, 2012, which he's done quite a bit of research on users of Twitter. And of course, what he made sure was that in order to get a really good understanding, you need to know that the quality of your engagement online is what matters the most and not the quantity, right? So if you've got a really good content going on, really good conversations, that you've got something that is quite powerful. And this is what I said a while ago. I tweeted this, became quite popular, but that's not the reason why I did it, but it's just something that I thought about. And I said that Twitter is less of a technology and more of a conversation, right? And it is happening with or without kids. And I think that this is still valid today. because you start to see huge amount of companies that just decide to ignore this altogether. To them, it's not important. In fact, you've got to pitch really hard to get anyone to agree to either give you a chance to research around them or to give you a chance to do a project around it. So it's really important to understand, and that's, of course, now things are slightly, we feel they're starting to change with Twitter, right? And why is that? Because Twitter is struggling, right? What is the biggest problem with Twitter so far? What's the biggest challenge with Twitter so far? What is the biggest challenge? Of course, the growth. The growth is the biggest challenge because the growth has not met the expectation they want. Growth has been staying there for quite a long time. And some research suggests that the reason for that is because it took them quite a while to start to introduce things into that platform. They were a bit slow, right? Whereas when you start to look at other powerful social networks like YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and so on, they actually went very quick